company to a multi-product company platform for which scales enterprise needs of customers. Previously, he's also been with as a product manager with Goldman Sachs and operation managers with ITC. He is the senior organizing member of Product Tank Pune. Thank you so much for helping us out, Arun, with the session. And over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I'm going to share my screen and, uh, and let's get started. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Yeah, your screen is up.
Okay. So thank you all for joining in. The title for the session is "The Right Approach Towards a PM Case in an Interview." Sahil, Alok, and these guys actually tried to help me understand what a PM case is. Personally, I've never experienced it. I've never cracked it, solved it, or given it to an interviewee. So my understanding is limited. But the gist that I was able to gather is we basically put ourselves in a situation so that people can start talking, asking questions, and having a discussion. So that's what I'm trying to do here today. It's not going to look like a traditional case, no numbers or data, because I wanted to fit into this speaker session format. I'm going to put us in a situation and help us find good questions to ask. In fact, I'm going to ask you guys to throw in questions and we can pick up the good ones. They've already introduced me. I'm researching on a startup idea called Prodlab. I'm not going to go deeper into that. Today, we're going to talk about two case studies. One is a hypothetical B2C case study. It's going to be more interactive. Basically, we're going to talk about quality of ideas and questions. Personally, I feel that for an interviewee, questions matter a lot, as much as the answers. And then the second case study is basically a story of B2B. It's from MindTickle. It's the company that I used to work with until a few months ago, and how we did some business decisions to pivot into new segments and grow our business. All right. So let's just dive into the first case study. I don't know. So let's stop calling it case. This is a situation. Airbnb is trying to launch in India. And you could just imagine like 3-4 years ago when they were not here. And the first question that they asked themselves was, who should be our target customers? Throughout this case, throughout this discussion, we're going to follow this format where I'm going to put up a question on the slide, and you guys have to probably put a question or put your answers in the chat box so that we can pick up some of them and have a discussion. So imagine that you are consulting Airbnb and they're requesting you to give an advice around what would be a good customer segment to target when they launch in India. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now so that I can see the chat box. Oh, I see 51 people here. Cool. Okay. So any ideas on what should be the customer segment that Airbnb should target? Any ideas from people? What's your first hunch, knowing the business model of Airbnb, knowing their success in the US? Okay, we've got a first response, young age. Okay, let's just say like people nearing college graduation, maybe around 20 to 30 years of age. Okay, 18 to 35, good, okay, broader. What else? What else do you expect about the target customer segment? Avid travelers, backpackers. Okay, avid travelers, backpackers, how do you identify them? Maybe through interests, maybe through their like the groups that they participate in. Travelers in middle class, and less estimate on monthly spending. Mhm. Customer who likes to travel. Okay. Mid-budget, looking for home experience. Interesting. So maybe people don't have a lot of budget to travel in India as much as they have in the rich countries. Cool. Oh, okay. Someone saying 30 to 45 age group for Airbnb. Okay. Okay, let's try to hone in that on that. Richa, why do you think 30 to 45 age group is an interesting age group to go after?
I think because at that time you need some break and then you can afford to visit or travel around. So I think that is the best possible group.
Okay, okay, got it. Interesting. Okay, and do you think they would know about Airbnb? They're aware of existence of Airbnb?
I think yes, because this age group is quite into traveling and all. So I think 30 to 45 would be the best.
Okay. College, single age, middle income. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Working professionals, university graduate students like yourself, huh? Ready to party. Students willing to travel at low prices. Okay. People open with open mind to stay anywhere. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. So it looks like we're kind of starting to converge on a target group, except for Richa's suggestion. Sorry, Richa. We're gonna move out into the next slide. Let me just quickly share my next slide. Um, so you could possibly think about customer segment in a bunch of different ways. In this case, you're looking at age, definitely yes, but then you're also looking at uh, do they have partners? Where do they spend most of their time? Colleges, offices, just the nature of their work, white collar, knowledge economy workers, city dwellers, internet generation people, because they're booking online, they need to have that trust. They should not be in the habit of booking hotels or trusting hotels already. They must be experimental in their thought process. Um, they could be people who would like to enjoy nature, because Airbnb has a distinct advantage. It could provide stays in places that don't require scale. Hotels prop up in places where you require scale, and they like to party with friends. Obviously, many of you have already mentioned these people might be going to colleges or maybe young and in offices. So they have a spending capacity, but they don't have a stockpile of money. I think this kind of summarizes some of the suggestions that came up, and we're probably heading in the right direction. So let's keep moving. Okay, so Airbnb found a good customer segment to go towards, and some of you were thinking in the absolute right directions, right? So they recently analyzed their supply side. They've already launched in India. They've found a good traction, and they found out that, and I'm not showing data here, but they've analyzed their data and found out that it looks like that properties that could support more than 10 people, they generally drop off within a few months. And it looks like that, like when they look at the platform activity or the product activity, it appears that these properties have low activity. They're not being shortlisted by travelers. So looking at the customer segment that you're targeting here, and going towards properties that properties that are dropping off, properties that support more than 10, 15 people, right? The key question then they're trying to figure out is, why are they not being shortlisted by travelers? What is missing in the property, right? So again, going back to you all, right? If you were to think about properties that would support more than 10 people or more than 15 people of travel, right? What would be your suggestions to make the property suitable for them, right? And this should be an easy question for you guys, because you guys probably fall in the same age bracket. You guys are probably the customers in the customer segment. So think a bit, and you can type in on the chat box. Um, what would be you can think about them as product requirement documents, right? So what would be your requirements for a property to be enlisted such that they have a higher chance at being shortlisted by travelers? Or what would you recommend to property owners to enrich, to change in their property, or to enrich their property with, so that they have a better shot at being shortlisted by the travelers? So I'm going to put the customer segment back on the screen so that you guys can see the customer segment. You can also think just about yourself if you're already in the customer segment. Just notice the problem. The problem says the properties that are falling off are properties that have capacity of more than 10, 15 people. So I'm putting the customer segment back so that you can focus on it. Like every other problem, we have to focus on customers. So this was the customer segment. And you have to write requirements for the property. What would make a property suitable to be shortlisted by customers? I'll give it a minute and then I'm gonna start looking at the chat box again and not share the screen anymore. I hope you guys have seen the customer segment now. Okay, stop sharing. All right. Okay, cleanliness. Okay, awesome. Yes, young people, they prefer clean places because they go to malls, they go to other clean places, so they have a higher sense of cleanliness in their head. The reference point is higher. Spacious, great amenities like pool and gym houses. Okay, so interesting. So these are young people who probably have a habit of going to gym and go there. Okay. Personalized spaces. What does that mean? Personalized places. Rajdeep Singh, are you on the call?
Yeah, I actually meant it in that context that you mentioned there are spaces for more than 10 people. So oftentimes people also go for a vacation in order to just live a life in like isolation, some of the people. So it should not have more crowd, I think, in that context.
Got it. Got it. Somebody's also written more security for belongings. So one of the key things that you have to think about is when you're writing requirements, there would be requirements that are applicable to this to a broader scope. So probably security is something that you expect anyways, right? So it's not very specific to what is required in a space that is meant for more than 10 people. Even if there are 2 people going to an Airbnb, security is probably the baseline. So while it is a good point to write about, when you're answering the interviewer, you could probably say something like, I expect the basic amenities and security and privacy concerns to be satisfied like any other, but I'm going to talk more about what is specifically required for this customer segment. And so what that does is it tells the interviewer that you understand that this segment is at the end of the day a smaller part of a large segment, but you're not trying to describe the whole segment. So for example, you're not going to describe it should have washrooms and things like that. You could probably you probably make some assumptions while answering questions so that you can focus specifically about the narrow customer segment that you're trying to respond for. Great Wi-Fi connectivity to airport and other transport modes. Okay, so you're assuming that you're going to a place by air and then going to that location. Cool. Should have place for celebrating party. Okay. So Darshan is a party guy. I agree. This is something that people in that age group would want to do. Good space, nature, free Wi-Fi, smoking zone. Okay, agreed. Price may be too high, can reduce some facilities and charges less. Oh, how would you okay, you're assuming that this should fall into the income bracket. Okay. Spacious and close. Close to malls and markets. Interesting. Proximity to visiting location, information about other occupants. Other occupants, if any. What's this? Can you help us understand this? Ayushi. Hello? Sorry, not Ayushi. Nidhi. Nidhi, are you on the call?
Hello.
Hey, you just responded with information about other occupants. Um, so help us
Yeah, so
understand.
I was wondering in case there are other occupants in the Airbnb, so the user would want to know who are they, and if like probably they wouldn't prefer someone from a totally different age group, or if they're compatible and would want to stay with them, or if someone is going and staying in an Airbnb because they're working there, and the other occupants are probably travelers who are partying a lot, then that could be um, someone I wouldn't want to stay with. So in that sense.
Perfect. So there will always be scenarios like this where you have possibilities in your mind that when someone says 10 plus occupants in an Airbnb, do they mean that this is a 10 plus person booking, or do they mean that the net capacity is 10 plus, but the bookings can be done by individuals? The reason why I mentioned this is because if individuals were making a booking, right, they would be able to do that in a small booking, small capacity place, or in a big capacity place. So uh, as interviewees, you have all the rights to ask questions to interviewers as to, when you say 10 plus capacity bookings, do you mean that the that if two people want to make a booking in this place, they cannot make a booking, or they'll have to pay full price? So that's a really good question to ask, and that's something that will clarify this question for you, the one that you've just answered here. So just to make things easier and clarify on that, in our case, in our context, when we say 10 plus like places that have 10 plus capacity, what we mean is that the places do not have the ability to compartmentalize their inhabitants, which means that like a single person can also book the place, but the price remains the same. The price remains the 10 plus booking price. And that's why individuals would not book. People would book it in groups. And that's the whole exercise about, right? So allow single room or bed-wise booking. So that's what I just answered. So this is something, these are the kind of questions you can ask, whether capacity means booking size. Furnished spaces, and there are a whole lot of other things. Functional kitchen, okay, somebody likes to cook stuff on the go, nice. Traveler group size, okay. I don't know what that really means. Are you referring to a vehicle, or are you asking a question? Okay, but let me just stop there. All right, so we've kind of established the kind of requirements that we would look for, right? So just to summarize, we're looking for a group booking to a place that can afford to have 10-15 people, and so we're trying to write requirements for that place. And okay, yes. So I have put some property requirements here. I might be missing a few that you guys have already suggested, but we're probably heading in the same direction, right? We're looking at high-speed internet access, because we know that these young people are very internet savvy. This is the advantage, and this is one of the reasons why they were able to book from internet. They like clean spaces. They go to malls. They go to posh places. They like to be in clean beds. They want to have clean washrooms, western toilets, whatever, right? So you basically need a swimming pool. Maybe you're like a party person. You want to make sure that neighbors don't complain about noise. You want to have cigarette trays and hangover remedies in place, so on and so forth, right? Perfect. Hit the jackpot. So your property listing requirements seem to work. Everybody is happy with what you've done so far. Activity on the product has improved, and it seems that these properties are being shortlisted. And it appears that people are shortlisting them and sharing them with friends, most likely those group members who are going to the property with them. And even though these properties are very well equipped because of the requirements that you just wrote down, bookings are still not happening. And the product manager who was working on this gave up and left. And as a young PM in the team, you have the responsibility to figure out what's wrong. Why is it that people are coming to the product? They are shortlisting the properties, so they like the properties. They're sharing it with their friends and still not making the booking. So what would you do? What's your next step? What do you do as a PM? Somebody's written, okay, somebody just told me I'm not sharing my screen, but yeah, it's still, the question still stands. Do some research, call these customers and understand their pain points. Go through customer reviews. What are you referring to as customers? Are you referring to the property holders or travelers? Travelers, perfect. So you're going to the travelers and you're trying to ask questions to get them to tell you. What kind of questions would you want to ask them, and what are the things that you would avoid? You can type those questions in the chat box. What questions would you go and ask? And you guys can probably think of yourself, if you are in the customer segment, what questions would you go and ask fellow people right here? And let me also see if we can have, I don't know if there's a poll section here. I don't know how to get polls done. But we could have asked those questions here. Some of you guys are in the segment. So people are putting in things like, people who have shortlisted things, will go to them and ask them, why did they stop finalizing the property? Okay. Rate your experience, what amenities are missing, what could be made better to enrich your experience. Would you book a similar property another time? If not, why so? How frequently they travel out of city? Okay. Do they travel with single or with family? This is an interesting question. Do they travel single or with family? It's going in the right direction, but it's kind of a bit wrong. Abhijit, can you help us understand what this question means? I like this question very much. Abhijit Chaudhary, are you on the call?
Yes,
Business travel or with family?
yes.
Abhijit,
Yes,
yeah.
I'm on the call. So, yeah. So my rationale was that a few people they travel for work purpose as well. So I've seen few of my colleagues opting for Airbnb as well in few places, and
Groups of 10, 15.
and the preference for both of them sometimes are different. People who are traveling single, for them a few of the amenities or few basic things are fine, but if they're traveling with family, then there are different issues which crop up. So then accordingly we need to see if the property is suitable for a family or for a single person. So the preference changes for both of them, and accordingly the complaints would be different and the reviews and feedbacks would be different.
Got it. Got it. So we're looking at bookings for 10 to 15 people. It is possible for people to be booking it for family. But then if it were for family, the age group that we're targeting would not, work with the entire family. So let's just assume that people are looking to go, like you said, maybe with their work friends or maybe with their outside work friends. Um, let's just make that assumption and move forward so that we don't get into the cycle of age group. um, I do see some interesting questions. Like you asked this question, right? Who do you travel with? It could be a good question from the same direction, We could ask, do you travel with your office friends, or do you travel with your friends from the same location or from some other location? Like people are coming from different locations for the vacation. Uh, Swarnima has also mentioned, for example, what is the purpose of the booking and the budget of the booking, right? This is a really good question to ask, because then you would immediately know the price constraints, and you would also understand why are people booking, and you would understand the urgency of booking, because the purpose drives the urgency. So this is a very, very good question to ask. Why are you traveling? Who are you traveling with? Is there a budget in your mind? I do see that a lot of these questions are coming from, are constructed out of answers that you have in your mind, right? So for example, is the price too high? Is a good question. There's nothing wrong with that question. But that question is actually constructed out of an answer that you already had in your mind. You had it in your mind that the reason could be price. Um, one of the very important things to note, as a product manager, the first or the earliest questions that you're going to ask are going to be open-ended questions. You have to start with open-ended questions, because that removes the biases that you might carry. So for example, purpose of the booking is an open-ended question versus is the price too high? Both of them, so for example, asking about the budget might also come out to the same outcome, but they are very different ways of approaching the same outcome. In one, you don't carry a bias in your head. You don't construct a question out of your answer. And in the other, you actually ask an open-ended question. So asking about who are you traveling with, what's your purpose, what's your budget like, these are some open-ended questions, and these are good questions to ask. What found them to stop them to finalize the booking? Okay, this is a really good question. What caused them to drop off? It typically gives you an answer that they changed their plans. When you ask them what stopped you from going to vacation, that's a very different question. So the reason why I mentioned that is you have to understand that product is only a means to the end. The end is what your customer was looking for. So you could possibly ask them a question: did you finally go? Maybe they did, maybe they did not. Or maybe if they did not, then you could ask them, what stopped you? Because they didn't just drop off from your platform, they might have actually completely canceled the plan. And if you guys think about it yourself, right? Okay, let me try to ask this question. You guys can probably push your answer here. When was the last time you went on a vacation with friends? I'm pretty sure somebody's going to say last month. New Year. Go ahead. Nobody went on a vacation? Oh, people are still thinking about it? Last Feb, okay. That's an honest response. So, Corona, okay. In 2019. I understand. Last quarter, about a year ago. Okay. So, and when was the last time you tried to go on a vacation? When was the last time you were sitting with your friends trying to plan for it? So what basically I'm trying to figure out is, one is the ability to go to vacation, and the other is your intent to go to vacation, right? So these are very important differentiations for you to understand about your customers. So you were trying to go to a vacation last week, and it did not work out, right? So then the next question is, was it because of some product that you were not able to go last week, or was it something else? What stopped you from going to the vacation? Maybe those are more important questions to ask, because the moment scheduling differences, right? So let me also try to elaborate on that. I think these are stories that everybody of us have heard. Scheduling differences, right? So maybe something like this. Every time you try to plan, someone spoils it. Someone says, of course, like he has to go or she has to go somewhere. It is difficult to find a common time. That's what scheduling difference would mean. I've been asking my friends to go to Goa for 3 months. Apparently, they don't want to, or maybe people refuse in the 11th hour. They don't want to go, like, and they realize it at the very last. No, I don't want to go there. Or maybe I have a date to go to, or maybe I have something else. I have a cousin's wedding, or I have a product launch, or maybe my exams, whatnot. Cancelled at the last moment, right? So these are some very practical things that you would understand when you go and talk to the customers, but you're not specifically asking them about the product. You're asking them about the original problem that they started with. They wanted to go on a vacation, right? And forget the product. They couldn't go on a vacation because 5 people or 10 people couldn't agree on a place, or couldn't agree on a time, or couldn't make a commitment, or couldn't keep a commitment. Maybe those are bigger problems to solve for when people are trying to go for vacations. Is it possible for them to for them to be motivated and stay motivated until the end, that their vacation materializes? So basically what I'm trying to do is, as a product manager, you would have to start with the problem. Product comes last, problem comes first. Go to the customer, study the problem first, right? I don't know if this is going in a direction the way case studies usually do, but I hope you guys are liking it. Okay, and just before we move forward, let me just share my screen again. So, yeah, there are a couple of things that you especially need to keep in mind when you're trying to ask questions. Those are that people still will have biases and taboos. So for example, if I were to, let's say, talk to the very people who just responded, I don't know their names, but if I were to go there and talk to them and ask them, what happened? Do you think people really understand that they turned it down, that they canceled the plan at the last minute? And they would probably say it was mutual. Right? If you go to a person and ask them, are you a party person? Yes, they are. Why? Because they want to be cool. So there are biases in society, right? So you might probably go and ask people the same questions, but in a different manner. So for example, what would your friend respond to this question, right? Or what would your friend say about you regarding this question, right? And so that comes out. Those are the kind of questions that will give out slightly different angles of information to you. This is very similar to asking, instead of asking, do you think your electricity bill is high, versus do you think your neighbor's electricity bill is high, right? So people are relatively free to talk about their neighbors, good and bad. But when they're talking about themselves, they want to be cool, they want to avoid taboos, they want to be good, right? So try to ask questions in a way that you can avoid these biases. And the difficult part is that you will discover these biases only when you'll ask some questions and then you revise the questions that you ask. Hopefully, the interviewers will tell you or give you hints about biases like these. And you have to be keen on observing the way they're responding. For example, if your interviewer is also in that target segment or says he's portraying that target segment, when they say they would love to go for a vacation, then you can ask them. And if they give you a reason that is outside them, so for example, if they say that the reason is their friends, then you can go ahead and try to ask them these different angle questions. Anyways, when you get those sample problems, people refuse in the 11th hour, try to go deeper. Try to find whether it is difficult for people to find consensus, find commitment. What is it that is wrong, right? So maybe people are just not able to agree on a place or a time. Maybe they're able to agree, but they're not able to keep their commitment. What is the problem? You have to find that problem to help them solve that problem. By now, you have probably noticed that the problem has changed drastically since we started the discussion, right? And this is something that is supposed to happen. As you go through your research, your questions will change. The problem that you're trying to solve will change. So you can probably create a tree or a hierarchy of problems to understand it better. These are some sample questions that you can ask them once you have narrowed down on the problem. So for example, here I've taken a sample problem, building a commitment for the plan, right? So like you said, 11th hour, people change their decision. And then you could probably ask, what is the hardest part about this? What is the hardest part about getting commitment from people? Why are they not committed? Uh, when was the last time you had this problem? Why was it hard? What did you try to solve that problem? Right? Maybe you tried to call them up and remind them. Maybe you try to like call them again and again and say, okay, this is a date block. Remember this. Don't plan anything on this date. We don't want any conflicts on your calendar. Maybe you went ahead and booked it on their calendar. What did you do to solve that problem? Right? What don't you love about what you did? Why was it cumbersome? Why is that a problem? If you had to block it on their calendar, was it difficult? What was wrong? Do you know other people who have this problem? This is an important question. Why is it an important question? It's an interesting one because it also gives you an idea that other people that they know other people. So whenever you would try to come up with a solution which is viral in nature or which has some network effects, it works very well when you have they know other people who have the same problem. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen to see the questions. Do we need to borrow some FBI interrogation to become good at these questions? I'd say some practice will do good. Maybe not FBI level skills, but I would say you would do well when you ask these questions from a standpoint of understanding the problem. Just focus on the problem first. How hard is it? Is it a problem worth solving? Is it really affecting the decision? Is it affecting the drop off and things like that? So I'll keep moving fast. We have limited time left. Okay. I won't go deeper into the possible solutions for this, but once you identify that there is commitment and there are deeper problems related to this, then you can think about solving it in a way that is not just a product workflow. You can think about how people are really emotionally feeling about the product. You can try to identify dependencies. I'll not go if maybe he doesn't go. I'll not go if it is not this location. I'll not go if it is not that timeline. Whatever that is, you can try to build that in, right? Try to use gamification. You can study more about gamification. I have put a link here for Octalysis. Octalysis is a great framework. You guys can learn more about it. I'll try to pause here, wrap this up. Basically, there's one message that I want you to go home with. Asking really good questions is a better judgment call around whether you are a good product manager or not. A lot of the answers are about logic. They matter a lot. Questions matter as much. So that was the message for the first one. Before I move on to the next piece, which is about the MindTickle story, I'll take a pause to see if you guys have any questions. I like the last one from Abhijit. Yeah, absolutely. This is the link, Abhijit. Someone has raised a hand. Just please go ahead and ask the question.
Yes, good evening, sir. Sir, my question is that, a lot of the time, people don't want to take out say
Hello. Swarnima, I'm not able to hear you. It might be my connection that's gone bad. Are other people, anybody is able to hear Swarnima?
No, we are not able to hear, but we are able to hear you clearly.
Okay.
So can I go ahead with the question in the meantime? She connects.
Sure. Sure. I've requested her to unmute. Meanwhile, you go ahead.
Okay. So my question is that right now, as we discussed, that apart from the answers which a consumer gives and what he does, there are other elements like how does he feel or how does he think. The other angle when we are asking the question. So in a B2C setup, I think we understand that when we have those kind of research exercises wherein we go and stay with the particular consumer and try to understand, which a lot of consumer companies do. But in context of B2B, how does those things work, like thinking and feeling part of it of a consumer? Because our end users, we are not so close to the end user that we can follow them or try to understand their usage or pattern. So in that case, how does it work? uh,
Well, it's actually very similar from a problem standpoint. It is very similar to B2C. As product managers, we still have to study the intent or the motivation of the person who is performing an activity on the product. It is the single most important factor for the success of your product. If there is one way you can increase the usage of your product, it is if you are able to increase the motivation or the intent of your user. uh, yes, other things do play a role. You have to make the product frictionless, seamless, automatic, but all of that comes second. Why? Because you can remove friction, but if the user does not have an intent, they would not even think about the direction. They would not even, like, for example, the best of the product of Airbnb would not be able to solve a problem if the group of people who are planning to travel are not able to get to a consensus that they want to be at a certain place at a certain time, right? So uh, the intent is the single most important piece of the whole problem understanding. In B2B, you have some other measures also that are available. So I would say, for example, in a B2B environment, the organizational hierarchy plays a really interesting role. So, for example, if you have designed a product that requires the user to record a piece of information, and you see that the user continues to fail or forget to record that information, then you can bring in the relationship of this user uh, with their managers or with their doctors into play. So, for example, if the manager says that they want the sales reps to fill in information into Salesforce every day without fail, if the person does not put in the information into Salesforce, then that person will be reprimanded or punished, right? So that's a manager's decision. Now, irrespective of how bad the user interface of Salesforce is or any other product is, um, the sales rep will find a way to put in that information because the motivation is so high. He knows that if he doesn't put in the information, that manager will come to know about it and will then reprimand the sales rep. So if you notice, the user is still the sales rep, the person who's putting the information in, but by providing the visibility of that activity to his superior and by establishing an intent with the superior, you are able to get an action done by another person in the organization. And the same thing also applies to many other B2C products or not so formal organizations. For example, a doctor is an authoritative role. And when a doctor prescribes to a patient that they have to record their weight every day, and the weight is going to get transmitted to the doctor, the patient is more likely to do that because then someone else is monitoring and he or she is the authoritative figure. The doctor is an authoritative figure. So relationships is another thing that is leveraged a lot in B2B products. I hope I was able to answer your question.
yes, yes, this was useful. Thank you.
Okay. I'm not sure if Swarnima is back on the call.
Sir, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So good evening, sir. Sorry for my internet.
No
So
problem.
my question is that, so the questions that you've mentioned, they definitely be very insightful. That is, if people choose to take out the time to answer them. So how do I get my customers to take out the time to answer such questions?
Well, the I mean, there has been a lot of back and forth on this topic out there on the internet. It depends on the setting that you are in. If you are talking to a customer, an established customer of your business, especially in B2B, you might be able to get to them and answer and request them for some time. And in B2B, as the enterprise customer, as the customer becomes bigger, this is, I would say, relatively easier, and you also go very well prepared to talk to them. In terms of B2C, the scale works in your favor, in the sense that some of these questions you can proxy them with objective type questions and float out surveys across your product. Technically speaking, NPS is also a survey, right? So you are able to get some answers done. So even if a small percentage of a large customer base answers a question, you are able to get some insights. Now, this is all for customers. What happens when you are starting a business, you don't have customers, you're only talking to some strangers out there, then in that case, you probably need to start with giving something to them first. Basically, the idea is still the same. You're establishing a relationship, but this is a very short-lived relationship that you try to establish. For example, you know that your user has a certain problem, not this problem, but some other problem for which there's a known service or a solution that you can give them. Maybe you can help them with some manual work, or maybe you can, giving them something first, whatever they're looking for. And some of those people might actually be willing to return a favor to you by giving you their time. Maybe for an interview, you can get a 15-minute session with them and then ask them this question. Initially, your intent should be to ask subjective questions or open-ended questions first, so that you can refine your questions and become, you can then ask objective questions through mass surveys later on. But the first few questions, the first few people you interview is going to be subjective, and they are the hardest people to, because you need direct time from them. That's why they are the hardest to reach out to. It's easier if you already have a customer base. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, I'll move on to the next piece, which is the MindTickle story. I'm gonna pause recording for this piece so that we're back on record. All right, if you guys have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we can wrap it up. Okay. Okay, awesome. So let's just wrap it up. I don't see any questions. It was great talking here. Thank you so much for inviting me and being here to listen. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here and guiding all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.